Hey everybody, welcome to the Art of the Possible podcast. My very special guest this week is Stef Boadle. We're excited to have her here. How are you, Stef?
I'm great, thanks, Rob. Great to be here.
Yeah,
and although we're in COVID, it's a welcome relief to be chatting to you and not my three children.
We're going to talk about that because isn't it families living on top of each other and people, I was telling you the other day that we sometimes got like 4 Zoom calls going on in this place, and there's a singing lesson about to happen, I've been told. So I've been told there's great sort of operatic music starts coming through from my oldest son doing VCE. That might happen. That'll be him just singing with his future live.
Fantastic.
So it's quite different. Hey, I thought we might kick off and go back in time just a little bit, and so a couple of things. One is I didn't know that you and I both went to RMIT, so that was interesting.
Oh, there you go. What did you study at RMIT?
Same as you did, Bachelor of Business in Accounting, but you were smarter than I did. You did accounting and marketing. I just did it as one elective. You must have done the whole thing. Because actually you were pretty successful. You got awarded. You were like a top student there. Was that right?
Well, actually, I did do Bachelor of Business Accounting because I went straight from Year 12 to PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Yeah.
And after I finished my traineeship, I thought, actually, my client said, I think you'd be really good at marketing or something else. So I did an exchange to a business school in Boston and studied entrepreneurship. And negotiating. Bentley College.
Right. Oh, you did so good that way. That's really interesting. Now, how did you take that when your client said to you, as an accountant, Steph, I think you'd be really good in marketing? Is that what they were saying?
I'd been there for 6 years and I had the same client since I started, straight out of school. And so you develop a great relationship. It was a client where we were traveling a bit, actually. Yeah. So we got to know each other, and I was I'm the old, square peg in a round hole story. And I was feeling a bit lost. And I knew, at school, I went to the career counsellor and they said, what do you want to do? Right. I said, well, I want to create businesses and help people. This was back in Year 12 or Year 11. And the career counsellor got out the big thick book and looked at all the, all the courses and said, well, maybe you should study business in accounting. I'm like, oh, okay. And then was fortunate enough to get a traineeship with, a big firm, which was fantastic. So I learnt hard work from the start, working full time.
Yes.
In a suit, moving from the peninsula, living in Melbourne, and then going to university at night. So I did RMIT with the mature age students.
Wow, isn't that weird? And of course you would have been after me, but I was there. So kind of similar in a way that I looked up that book as well at the career counsellor, and they were like, just for you, I think you should take anything you're given, was pretty much their advice to me as the career counsellor. Whatever course you get into will be good. So, but I remember going to business because I was with a friend of mine, and his father was a physiotherapist. He was a psychologist. He was a psychologist, but he drove this fantastic Aston Martin. I remember going, and the father said, I reckon business is good. If I hadn't done psychology, I reckon I should have done business. I'm thinking, he's a really smart guy. He drives an awesome car. That's my career advice. So I did exactly the same thing at RMIT, did Bachelor of Business, and then I started at KPMG. So,
oh wow, we haven't had this conversation.
I know we haven't. It's bizarre. So I was at KPMG and I literally had the same conversation. I'm just so weird. We just had this 3 minutes ago.
Oh.
Where people said to me, Rob, I don't know, accounting's really interesting. You should do more stuff in like business or marketing or sales. So I was like a hint. I had a fabulous time there, and I was lucky. I was in kind of a trainee program as well. We did a program mid-year, so I did like 2 years of business. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, that's kind of sandwich year, and I went off and they said KPMG was the hardest place to get into. So I went, right, that's my goal. I'm going to get in there. And I got in there and I stayed there a while, and I did ended up staying on for holiday work and all sorts of stuff. And it's so weird, and I've still got a relationship with them. They're still kind of an alliance partner of me today. So it's been a long journey, but I was a bit similar to you. I was fascinated reading it, sort of doing that, going through it and learning so much about M&A and JVs and audit, which just killed me. And just some of that work now. And then coming around to sort of the sales and marketing entrepreneurship, but I think business is a good background. Would you agree it was a good course for you to do?
I'm absolutely agree. I think it was the best grounding. As I said, you learn your work ethic, how to build effective professional relationships with clients, with internal staff, all different levels and ages and experiences, cross-industry experience. But, what I found once I'd studied overseas and went through a full-on course called the Harvard Negotiating Project and Entrepreneurship Project, I realized that background, coupled with all my desires around ideas and how I naturally think, they can actually marry well together. And kids these days are encouraged, they're encouraged that they're going to have 7 to 9 career changes, I think. Yeah. But back when we were at school, you were really focusing on what's that one career goal. So, yeah, it was nice. I came back from overseas and I door knocked advertising agencies, and they pretty much laughed at me and offered me a job in the accounting section. And I was fortunate that one agency managing director walked past the boardroom, and I had a flowchart up exempling how transferable skills were into account management. And he took a chance on me, and he's still a very good friend this day. And I'm very fortunate that he saw that those skills would be really valuable to clients in advertising.
Yeah, well, look, what a great guy he is, because he's also quite rare. So many people don't do that. In fact, interesting, just today in the Fin Review, they were talking about the fact that as we come out of COVID, we're needing more leaders who are operational leaders who can do many things in an organisation. And one of the leaders was saying, she said, we've actually been training for specifics. And we've got this obsession with specificity over the last 20 years, where we've got people on boards in senior leadership positions that actually can't do much outside their lane. And she said that's a real problem when you've got to cope with a crisis and cope with challenges where you need people who can actually move between different roles, understand different areas. So I completely agree. And his vision there was absolutely spot on, but it's rare that people can see it. And that's what, you're an entrepreneur, you're doing so much, you're doing so many things, and in small business you do so many crazy things as well. I came from a small business background, so my parents, my father was a motor mechanic, and his whole view said to me, you talked about that 9 career changes, he's like, look, whatever you do, get into government, just get into government, and you'll never have to leave, you'll have a job for life, and you'll just retire. And I can't reflect back. I was like, that is nothing. My ambitions are nothing like that. That's just like the worst thing in the world. But then I kind of, as you reflect later on in life, I kind of think what he was going through is after he'd probably done 35, 40 years of small business. I could understand why he was like, my God, chasing customers, bills, all that stuff was probably got to the toughs. He's probably seen more of the dark side of small business at that point. He's gone, whatever you do, do this, go do this other thing. He never done it himself, mind you. I think he knew one person who was in government, thought it was a good idea, but that was it. But that whole thing now of like so many career changes, I love this the term side hustle. I think I've been side hustling since about a bit like you, since like 91. So we've been doing those different things and ideas that come, and now it's like a cool thing. We're like, I've been there. It's old. That's what you call it. Interesting.
And I think too, coming back to what you say, particularly with kids, if they have parents with a small business, they see the success, well, their definition of success. Yeah. And a lot of people do if they want to get into business. I'm sort of diverting but as we know, success, it's hard work, and it's like this.
Absolutely.
There's no.
It's not linear. It's it's up and down. There's roller coasters. You do take off on tangents here and there, but at the end of the day, sometimes those tangents are fun. Sometimes they can lead to really interesting things and paths that you go to as well. I think that's the kind of journeys that we all go on, and yours has just been fantastic. I wanted to draw us back a little bit to through your advertising days. You got in the agency world, and I got into the agency world through the just really kind of sheer luck and connections. I think networking was absolutely what it was about, and a little bit about in my book is a little bit about that. And but really through the graciousness of Rick Otten, who you know at Mojo, who was a friend of a friend. it put me in touch, and Rick took a chance on me absolutely at a time, and it was a time that they were looking for someone in the direct side, so I ended up there. Then you and I got to work on Jetstar together at the launch of Jetstar, so we came together, and what a fascinating launch that was. I thought that was actually one of the great launches, and you were just absolutely amazing. I think Chris Bayman made a comment that you're world class at whatever you do, and I would have to agree with that. What was it like when you got you were in it before me? But how did you get involved in that Jetstar?
Wow, that's very kind. Thank you. It still would be the highlight of my career. I was very young. I was only 25 and in the industry a couple of years. And as I said, lucky that a few people saw that the skills were required, coming from business background, and for a Jetstar launch, perfect, because you need to understand how to manage or set up a business, balancing costs and making really good decisions, creating efficiencies. So it was 2 creative directors that I'd worked on a pitch when Ansett went under administration. Right. And we started the agency, and the CEO of Qantas at the time, we had lunch with, and he said he'd like to start a low-cost airline before he retired. So it started there, and Alan Joyce and Bruce Buchanan were brought in as consultants. Yep. And we started on a little table, and they worked on the business plan, and we were side by side working on the larger marketing idea and the branding. It was a massive, massive learning curve. And what I loved about it was I really could do what felt right because I had no real experience in the industry. And we all just worked really well together, and there was no right or wrong because it hadn't been done before. No one had launched an airline in the country. So we all took our business brains and coupled them with the creative idea and really got a good team of people, and likewise yourself, and many people came into the fold to help with the project. But I still think about it a lot. I missed the challenge.
But the leadership there, I think, was really strong. I mean, even from, you talk about Jeff Dixon making that, I want to get this airline launched, but his vision of having a low-cost airline needing a nimble, agile agency. He didn't want to get lumbered with the big stuff, wanted the backing of the big organisation, but having it nimble, and I think having the team, the leaders in the agency, having that connection to Jeff, I think also was fantastic. And it was nimble and agile, but people were allowed to be what they wanted to be and make those calls, like you said. I'm really excited now. I've reflected back when you said I was doing it the way I thought it should be done. I was very new in it. Hey, I was taking your lead. I thought you were the experienced one. You're telling me that.
Well, I was looking at it from an entrepreneurship view. Yes. So I built the agency with Ted Horton and Chris Dewey based on the needs of that industry and the client, not what everyone else did in advertising, to build a retainer model and staff up. So we also recruited internally looking for different skills. Yeah. And so did Jeff with his own team. So it worked really well. So, that's where it sort of goes to my idea of co-working. Yeah. We had in a room, mathematician, procurement people, operational people, political advisors, marketing specialists, sales specialists. Yeah. It was engineers, pilots. Yeah. We were working alongside people every day who had different skills and different personalities, and I thrived, and I just loved it and learnt so much.
I agree completely, and I do still remember the so many experiences of it. I remember a couple of the highlights for me were working with I think it was Tanya Michaelides at Mojo, who was doing direct creative, and she came to me and she said, "Hey, we're going to do this creative in a banner ad, and the plane's flying above our heads as it goes over, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we want to have the planes that are taking off." She goes, "What colour's the bottom of the fuselage?" And I remember going, "I don't know." And then I think I maybe even called you or something. And we were like, no one's actually tooled that up. And I think we went through a few phone calls and go, well, was it going to be orange or is it going to be the silver? And I think they hadn't even made their minds up in terms of the paint colour at that time. I think we're going with orange. Well, we're kind of going with the creative now. I think we went with orange. It was just this, that's how fast it was. But it was so much fun, wasn't it, to be at that pace. And those great questions, I thought, from Tanya, which was a kind of Actually, that's a great question. What is the underneath of this thing actually look like?
Yeah, I actually remember that day because it was, I mean, I'm not talking out of school here and I wouldn't say anything I can't say, but we did move very quickly every day to the point, board meeting tomorrow, what's the name and the logo?
Yes.
Okay, we've researched them, but that changed overnight.
Yeah.
And what is the colour? A little story that we were having lunch one day and we were drinking Verve and we thought that colour orange was the great Pantone colour. So we got as close to Verve as we could. And I remember the call. Okay, so the livery of the plane. Okay, that's right. Then we've also got what was actually one of the most exciting, and you would love this in sales. We were working on the plane livery and the advertising, obviously, and the marketing idea and plan. What I really, really loved and learnt a lot about is when Jeff Dixon and Alan Joyce and Bruce were clever enough to get us involved in the recruitment of the first staff.
Wow.
So the front, the air, stewardesses and pilots, we were involved in the recruitment to make sure they fit the brand. Yeah. And reflected the personalities and the values that we had been developing. And for me, that was so exciting to really see from the start a brand extending itself beyond its logo and advertising.
To really it hits the customer. That's so impressive. I remember how intimately involved they were. And you and I will probably never forget the shoot that had to happen in Inglewood in 46 degrees. I mean, you couldn't have picked a day to do a TV shoot where we had no choice because I think it was going to air on like a Wednesday and we were there on the Wednesday.
Yes.
And it was still, I reckon, one of the hottest days I've ever been in regional Victoria, being there and getting that shoot done. But I think the funniest thing I remember about that was Alan Joyce wanting to be at the shoot and really wanting to be involved in it. Don't you remember this? You remember he flew to Melbourne, was going to hire a car and drive up, and he'd forgotten his driver's license, and they wouldn't let him hire the car. And so he had to catch the train. He had to catch the train from, I think, Spencer Street Station to Bendigo, and then someone drove back from Inglewood to pick him up and drive him all the way up. It was just kind of chaos in the morning, and Alan was so determined to be there. He could have flown back, but he was like, no, I made it. I was going to be there. I want to be part of it. And we spent that. The only place that had air conditioning in entire Inglewood was the pub, and we were having a series of drinks and beers and with Alan. We're all there waiting for the pub. It was a fantastic. How Magda got through that wearing all that gear, it just blows me away to this day. But it was an experience. An
amazing experience. I mean, and Alan, what a committed CEO, and so fortunate to have worked with him so closely early on.
Now, did you know, was it a fluke, or did you know that Inglewood was actually the birthplace of Sir Reginald Ansett? Was that anything?
Look, it was a fluke, and we did find out at the time. It was an absolute fluke. Yeah, we found a location based on the beautiful street, right? The everyday Australian street.
Yeah. And that was such a weird thing. I remember coming into Inglewood the first time and seeing that his birthplace, Sir Reginald Ansett, and I've gone, oh, wow, what is going? This is something kind of out there. If it's been planned or not. But yeah, it was a wonderful experience. Loved doing that. Now we've gone through from advertising agencies, and you're a young 25, 26-year-old there, entrepreneur. Hey, now you're a mum. What's being a mum like?
Well, I've got 3 kids ranging from 8 to 13, yes, and a puppy at the moment. So I've really got 4. Look, obviously we love it. There's times I really miss my career, which sort of, heads to why we moved down to Mornington Peninsula. We were living in Richmond, but once my first child was climbing the walls, we moved back down to Peninsula where we both grew up, my husband and I.
So you were both from down there. I didn't know. So you were both from down the Mornington Peninsula way. We
both grew up here. We actually went to primary school together.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So we were fortunate that we could work down here, and I was still consulting a bit to the agency. And, my third child, I remember sitting one night, I'm helping other brands. I was helping small businesses and entrepreneurs bring brands to life and ideas to life. And I really miss doing it myself.
Right.
So I thought, I'm going to start a business. What will I do? or I thought, well, what would I say to my clients who wanted to start a business? Start with your passion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember breastfeeding at 3:00 in the morning, where I used to get my best ideas. And I love tea.
Yeah.
So I was the first person in Australia to launch an online tea brand. Everyone thought I was crazy. Who's going to buy tea over the internet when they can't taste it? And developed actually, because of Jetstar, I drank too much coffee, got way too stressed and burnt out. So I quit coffee.
Right.
And took up a lot of tea drinking. And I was getting quite embarrassed. When was this? Like 15, 18 years ago, going to a cafe and ordering a tea. Yep. And everyone's got their little lattes walking around and picking on me when I'm ordering my tea. Right. So I designed a glass tea bottle that you could take out and about with loose leaf tea, because I'm dead against tea bags. So that was my first little business that did really well, outgrew the kitchen table within a month, did a little office under the stairs down here on the peninsula, and outgrew that once the staff were coming over.
What was it called?
More Tea.
More Tea, yeah, okay. And so you ended up exiting that, is that right?
So I ended up selling that business.
Yep.
Because it was 3 years old. I started then looking for a warehouse to grow. Right. And I miss working with people. Right. I thought about commuting back to Melbourne, and it just wasn't possible for me because I want to be there for my kids before and after school. Yeah. So going back to work full time is not an option. Plus working for someone else is never going to be an option for me again. Yeah. So I went to warehouse hunting and found the perfect space and thought, I'm going to start a co-working space. And this was 5 years ago. People thought I was nuts in the industry. They said a co-working space in a regional area will not work. Yeah,
I'm fascinated by that because we see co-working spaces clearly in larger cities generally, but in where you are, I think that's needed as well. So you saw the warehouse. What was it? Despite people saying no to you, what ended up being the real lessons from that? What are the people who were actually in small business in the regional area where you were? What was it different than what others were saying?
Well, there was probably only 5 other co-working spaces in Australia at the time. Right. So we had our first co-working industry conference, which I went to and told them my idea, and they were the ones that said I was crazy. They said, you're not going to get that traffic. So, and the income per square meter. But I said, well, actually, I'm going to base my model on something completely different. And again, like the airline, lucky with co-working being a new industry, there was no benchmark, no rules, no formulas. So I could develop a business plan which suited my customer.
Right.
And my community. So I based the co-working space on community because I was missing a business community myself, having come from such a vibrant, creative industry previously. So we found the warehouse, and I thought, people on the Mornington Peninsula don't really need space. They can work from home. Most people have bigger houses than they would in the city. What they need is a community of like minds, support, inspiration. And what did I need? And that was very similar. So I actually filled the space whilst it was being built.
Yep.
So again, got the space, but needed to quickly renovate it to get the income in. So it was another whole quick 6-week business model launch. No time to breathe. And every day I just troubleshooted and kept going. Was fortunate that I have a great architect friend in Melbourne, and I said, I want a space that's high end, that people from Melbourne moving down will probably want to work. And I know IKEA rule. And it needs to pay homage to the environment of the peninsula and our community. So very fortunate that I have been able to further develop the space based on the community needs.
Yeah.
For example, if someone comes in with a desk, they're starting a business, and then they grow, which is so fulfilling to see.
Yeah.
And then they need staff, so I'm able to then maybe build them an office.
Right.
So I really base my business plan. It moves every 3 months. It changes all the time.
Yeah.
The benefit of co-working is providing flexibility to small business. So no lease contracts, but that's very high risk. as a business owner, as a business model. So just being able to have faith to take the risk and make change has been key to the success of the space. COVID's a great example. The industry is really confused right now. It could be a really good thing or a not so great thing.
And what's your approach? Your approach to it, when we spoke about it earlier, and I love this fact of community. So you're now with that agile, business plan as well, talking about different things. So flexing the space inside the space, space to look at potentially podcasting studios or a filming studio and things like that. So tell us, because it is in confusion in some places. What's your view, as a thought leader in this space? What are you looking to do, and what are you looking to see as some of the early trends?
Yes, well, definitely out of the CBD. I think the strategies are different. Within the CBD, a lot of their income is through traffic, the hot desks, the people needing it for a day, or people, sitting with their headphones coding, and a lot of tech-based. Where I am, there's a lot of small business, medium-sized business. Some businesses have thrived. Right. There's been some food businesses, some online businesses, finance brokers, they're doing really well. But in terms of a space, the way that I need to pivot during this time, I feel, is probably more small offices. So as you can see, we can see behind me, I did something quite unique in the industry, and I created small team offices that had glass, so they still felt a part of the space, knowing that most of my target customer are teams, not through traffic.
Yeah.
So I think potentially I would add more spaces, offering more services for small business to help them thrive. So as I said, maybe podcast, video, but a really big key thing I feel, particularly again being removed from the CBD, is being a knowledge base. So having really good education for small business to help them move forward. Yeah. And just provide a safe environment for people to come and support each other.
Yeah, and I love that gets back to your whole principle of the community versus the price per square meter kind of analogy. I think is really strong. One of the things you talk about, your agility with the 3-month plans and changing those up. You're always thinking about it, the way you've been able to get the space up and going so fast, and the kind of way you are is what I call a positive doer, which is probably just you being you, right? But where does that come from?
Oh, it's a hard one. I think I still do. I'm someone who loves to be doing many things. So, for example, the tea, I sold it after 3 years. I get bored. I love to create. I love the process of creating. And once something's smooth, I get bored. So for me, I've always been a doer, but probably the work ethic instilled in me from a young age. I've played a lot of sport on top of a full work schedule. I have many passions, but I like to delve deep into a passion. Right. For example, at the moment, I became a lines person for Tennis Australia last year. Right. So that was going a bit further into my passion, and now I'm trying to get to more of the court supervisor referee type of roles. So to answer that, in being a doer, I surround myself with positive people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't like people that blow out your flame. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we call them, a few friends and we call them the foofers, like they blow out your candle. Yeah. I've always subconsciously, even in high school, I look back and go, I've always sort of made sure I'm around positive people. And I mean, that doesn't mean you can't have an unreasonable friend who tells you the honest truth, and that's fantastic. I just don't do lazy, lots of different passions plus work. I think that just keeps me doing. Yeah. And of course, it's rewarding, and for myself, not for other people.
We talked about sport a little bit earlier then, and the kind of sport you did, and you were doing that, from an early age. You were kind of doing both. How does sport help you think, and especially team sport, which you were doing as well? How does that help you, and how does that set you up for success in business?
I think for me particularly, and even now I'm training more. I'm playing tennis I played at an international level for Australia last year, which is exciting. So for me, it's fundamentals like goal setting, working with others to achieve those goals. Again, just that work ethic of setting a goal and working hard towards it. I know that's so cliche, but just not resting on the norm, not being happy.
Yeah, with status quo, just wanting to go to that next level. I find that too. It's interesting on tennis. Yeah, you can look at tennis and go, it's a very individual sport, but you and I know that's not true at all. And as I said, I've got more into cycling away from yachting in recent times. And I always had this. You might have heard this quote people say. If you want to go fast, go on your own. If you want to go further, go with a team. And what I've learned in cycling, and that's absolutely bullshit, it's bullshit, is that if you want to go faster and you want to go further, get in a team, because no sport that I've been involved with proves that more than any other than cycling, that the peloton or the group, being in a group and exchanging, working together, you will go way faster and way further than stuck in against the wind for 5
That's
hours.
true.
And it's been one of those really interesting things. And I was probably a believer in the first quote, get out there, do it yourself. If it's to be, it's up to me, things like that, which have got their place. But I've also learned that really with the right people, and that is the right people, to your point earlier about surrounding yourself with the right people in that, business peloton, if you're going to call it that actually do rotate, do protect and do help each other, is incredibly rewarding experience to kind of have that happen. You will go further and you will go faster. And so you really can't do it on your own. You talked about your architect colleagues who helped you, because knew your vision, knew you, and you've got that done. And clearly you've got a bunch of suppliers and vendors who help you out getting cargo work up to speed. So I think that's a networking part. I think a lot of small business owners miss, or people who, when they go into business themselves early on, miss that part. They just assume it's going to be there. Do you find that with some of the new?
Yeah, I think you need to do a business to realize, all being a team sport, you don't learn quickly what you're not good at and accept to get help with it. That's the old story as well. I mean, Ash Barty is a great example of turning tennis into a team sport. I'm not sure if you know of her story, where she played and then left and went to cricket. She came back and everything is we. You will never hear her say I. Yeah. And she has built such a great team around her, and she plays for the team.
Yeah.
Again, it's surround yourself with the right people and just accept what you're not good at.
Yes, I think it's very true. There's a book out by cycling book by Peter Sagan, who was a 3-time world champion. Not many people win the world 3 times in a row, but his whole book, it's all Team Peter. It's and what he means by that is there's not just him. And when he's moved between different sponsored teams, he would say to them, "Look, it's all very well. I know we're having this great discussion, but you do realise if I'm coming, 6 other people here are coming too." From the mechanics to, so if you want to, we're happy to do it, but just realise it's just not me, it's Team Peter. And Team Peter is this group, and it's and he's always talks about, it's a great win for Team Peter. And there was a great scenario where he won one of the events at the Tour Down Under in Adelaide, and Peter won this stretch or this stage, but he was also the guy who packed up the banner that goes over, they cycle through us all blown up, your air block. He was back there packing it up, rolling it up after he'd won. And, it's just,
wow.
And he said that even running the event, he says, is a team thing. You can't just team up as a professional sportsman and have all these other people. It doesn't just happen. And it's so interesting to find various people like a Peter Sagan, like an Ash Barty, because they do have to sometimes go away and come back and have a different lens on it and back and take a look at it from a fresh face. Who are
and that's
no, you go on.
I was going to say that's entrepreneurship. It's a team, and I think, and for me, moving from business idea to business idea, quite often I've got the same team behind me as my support, or I'm utilising along the way. So the similarities in sport and entrepreneurship, and I wonder if there's a study that most entrepreneurs are deeply engaged in sport. it'd be really interesting to see the qualities and how they're transferred across, as you were saying before. How does team sport help you in business? Have you been watching The Last Dance?
Yes, yeah.
There's a great example of, Jerry and you're going to coach, manager, owner, players. You couldn't get more of a diverse group of people, which is with differing opinions, which is why the team worked.
Yes, exactly. And you've got to have those differing opinions. Otherwise, you end up in a tiny little bubble of people like you, like the other guys, and you don't really have any diversity of thought. Or what I like to encourage, even in account teams I'm talking with a sales team or a leadership team. I said, in the leadership team, you need to have that crazy nut who goes, hey, why don't we? And if you have that and you shut that person down, that's great. But you've got to entertain what they have, because you need them, because one day they're going to be right. The 2 or 3 at a time they might be actually right, and you guys haven't thought about it. And that's the ability of a team to do that. And really good teams, when they actually start all thinking the same, need a leader to go, "Come, we need to shake this up." Bring that in. And I was lucky to, from a personal experience, when I came into HP, I came from Apple. And that's what HP did. The leader at HP, a guy called John Bisky, was very, very sharp. And he said, we're not getting any fresh thinking. We need someone outside it. So, and they had people at HP for 30, 45 years, because it was just an awesome place to work. Great engineering company, great culture. And when they brought me in, I remember several meetings coming in and just listening to them on product plans and the like, and thinking, oh, why are they doing that? I didn't know whether to say anything or not. And then I got to a point where I just went, well, why don't you ever thought about doing kind of this, this, and this? And it was all silent, and I didn't know whether I was just about to lose my job or not. Then they went, who brought this bloke in? What a great idea. And it was just stuff that I'd just seen somewhere else. There's nothing rocket science behind it at all, but I'd just seen it. And that's the freshness of that leadership at OPE, to say, we've run out of ideas. We need to bring in someone from whatever organisation it is, but one that's more agile or innovative than we are. And getting back to the ad agency business, I was listening to a session with Russell Howcroft, ex-PwC. He's now there. So Russell's ex-ad man at PwC. But he made this point, and I'll just quote it. He said something like this. He said he felt that up until COVID-19, Australia was constipated in terms of its innovation and ideas. He felt that ideas got up, but then either Canberra or federal government, state government squashed it down, had too much red tape, and things just weren't as agile or as innovative as they could be. But he hoped COVID-19 had loosened up the constipation, if you will, and that ideas might be allowed to flow more freely. You got any thoughts on that, or experiences you've had in the operating here?
I would assume, just sitting back now, thinking just based geographically where Australia is, and obviously our exports, imports, whatever is happening during COVID and globally, you would think that businesses will have to do things a bit different and be innovative, keep some manufacturing local. Like, it can actually, it's going to help us. More of that innovation will come through, you would hope. I mean, I loved hearing the government during the start of COVID, when everyone was that, it's kind of been like a grief cycle.
Yeah.
When everyone was really panicking and worried. I loved that was it the New South Wales government? You could go onto the website, and if you were a manufacturer, they had a list of everything they needed manufactured. So if you could pivot your manufacturing line, this is what we needed. I mean, fantastic. So that needs to happen on a bigger scale. But just given the necessity of where we are and our relationships overseas, I mean, travel, there'll be a lot of innovation within. There's many industries. There'll be lots of innovation. So I think naturally that's going to happen.
Well, I think it can happen. I think that one of my clients is supplies to the federal government, and they said, normally it's a lot of bureaucracy on both sides, but the federal government, they said, turned around and they said what would normally take 6 months for them to get done happens in 6 weeks. And so they were put out as a private enterprise business after having to really scale up, because the government just cut the red tape and got things to happen. Now, here's the point. Well, hopefully that becomes BAU, business as usual, and we don't go back to February 2020, because if they can do that, then how exciting. Like the New South Wales example you gave. Here we are. We need this. It's like almost wartime, isn't it? Not that you and I have experienced it. But so if they can pivot and they can do it, then surely that's a great thing. I think that's where Russell Howcroft was coming from, was that we've seen it. They did do it. Can we make that sustainable going forward?
Well, maybe obviously it needs to be prioritised more to get put up to the list. It's hard for me to comment on because I naturally talk to people within this space. Yeah. So I'm always hearing of the wonderful ideas, and Australians are known as the innovators. So it's really, I think it's exciting. I mean, I reached out to you. This period has been fantastic to reconnect with people that you used to work with. And I mean, I think our first call was very early in the piece where I was so excited. Yeah. My natural thinking brain was creating products and solutions for people and ideas. And I must admit, it has slowed down as I've slowed down with homeschooling the children. But hopefully people who have always had an idea or that side hustle that they haven't been able to do, hopefully they've made the most of this time, and they're able now to have a go, and they're not afraid. And it will be a really good time for people to do something that they've never done before.
So what have you, just in say, let's talk about the Mornington Peninsula where you are. Have you seen some good pivots?
Yeah, it's been fantastic actually. I mean, naturally, the peninsula has been a fantastic place to eat at the moment. Every wonderful restaurant is delivering, or some of the great food wholesalers can't wholesale to the restaurants, so we get to buy direct. A wonderful high-end winery, we had dinner delivered that we had to cook, but it was just branded beautifully. The whole customer experience, which is why you would go to this certain restaurant, actually came to the house, where there was the Spotify playlist, how to enjoy your meal, how to set up the table, how to cook, how to dine well at home. What I liked about that is they didn't just pivot to online and delivery. They thought about how the customer experience was going to be enjoyed at home.
Yeah. And the fact that other people would talk about it like we're doing now, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually found myself, I never take photos of food or anything, but I took photos of the branding, and that they just did a beautiful job. I'm just really proud I'm close to the real small businesses down here who work hard every day to make a sale in their store. Yeah. And those entrepreneurs that aren't brave, so to go online, to put themselves online and talk about the clothing they're selling. Yeah. For example, quickly setting up a website, which is something they'd never done. Actually, one store I love, she still uses pen and paper invoices.
Really?
And to see her drink some gins and wine to get confidence to go on a Facebook Live to show the stock in her house was huge. So for me, those little wins of seeing people flick from face-to-face contact to, maybe I could go online and be brave. That to me they're the big pivots. I mean, Bunnings for me has been a good big one where I can just drive in. I don't have to go into Bunnings and I drive out, but that's expected of a big corporate company. Yeah. What I love are the small people who actually aren't entrepreneurs at heart, who have really pushed themselves to change the way they sell. And hopefully they find a way to keep that. Maybe then they need to maintain that balance of online.
Yes.
I was chatting to a cafe today. What are the numbers of letting 20 people sit in the cafe? Are you better off to keep takeaway going and not bring staff in? Everyone.
In fact, I was talking to a cafe owner down in Mornington, funnily enough, about that very subject, and I was cycling down there. About that when you bring them in, and the extra cost of staff in doing that versus keeping going a bit longer, and it was chatting. It's very interesting, but just thinking about that. But I think that also is when you've got that passion for something, it gets back to your values a lot, isn't it? And you think, I've got something of value, or I do something of value. I've got a great product. How, if it's important to me, it's important for customers. How do I get it out? And then once if your why is strong enough, the how is easy. So the how becomes, I'm going to do Facebook Live. I'm going to do, this takeaway. I'm going to do it better than it's been done before. And so why, but if you haven't got the why right, or you're not really into your product or service, it becomes a little more challenging. I got a question for you though, which is coming up, which may be coming your way, which is, I'm told that a lot of councils, City of Bayside here, you're in Mornington Peninsula down there, are going to be given a whole bunch of money, right, by the government, not just federal or state, a whole bunch of money to kickstart businesses and get the economy back going. What would you recommend their top 3 things be?
Ooh.
Question without notes. Sorry about that, but just
no, that's a really good question.
If you was given $1 million, where would you, if you were in charge of that $1 million to get business going on the peninsula or reinvigorate it? What would you do? What would
just business? I think on the peninsula, I would obviously look at which industries are affected the most, and tourism, food, all of those down here. But I would definitely do an innovation grants program. But not just give out the money, like actually create some local mentorship workshops, over a 3-year period, because it's going to be a long journey.
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't just be that Band-Aid fix. Here's some money to get that idea going or to expand on what you've been doing. So working with local businesses, reaching out to service providers who can help during this time. And as I said, it's not short term, giving them a 3-year plan and assistance along the way. I think something for children too. It's really, I feel for kids at the moment because, and I don't know what the answer is, where that money would go for children. And I'm not thinking of schooling or parks or something, but what can we do for children during this time? Everyone's poor kids, they're getting negative comments left, right and centre about homeschooling, which is not their fault. They don't understand why they can't ride their bikes with their mates and hang at the shops for 5 hours. And I think kids have been the best out of this. They've shown us how resilient, adaptable they are, more than adults. So what can we do for kids locally, just to support them through this process? I don't know what that is, but I think that's something that's been missed.
Yeah, and it is tough for them. I'm at the other end of the spectrum. My youngest is doing VCE this year, and he's just missed a whole lot at this point of what his brothers went through in VCE, and missing that final year at the school. Even though it's a tough, hard year, there still is a bit of magic about that final year of leaving a place you've been at for a while, no matter what school you're at. And so it's been really hard for a lot of them to pivot and not see their teacher, not be able to have that contact as you can see them during a break or over lunch. You have to really get better at your comms. And so I think those years, especially the year 12s, have done it really tough. And then you've got all the way through to your point where you just can't go and hang out at a skate park or go and do the jumps if you're doing BMX or something. It's just, there's only 2 of you can go and you've got to go with your dad or something because it's a family member or your brother or sister. It's a bit different. But I agree with you. There's got to be something sort of around that, isn't it, to just kind of acknowledge in many ways what they've been through. Yeah.
A festival of kids.
Maybe something like that. And I think that's going to be interesting, even with music and all sorts of stuff that we're going to have to kind of, when we come out of this or whenever we come out of this. I mean, you're still talking about another year of this before international travel. Someone was asking about a conference. Will I be going to the March one in the US? And I said, well, actually, I don't think I will. I think that's going to be a little early, even though it seems miles away. For me. It kind of leads me to the last question for you. You talked about my business plan changing up every 3 months. How far out are you going at this point in terms of your planning?
It actually was out I definitely have a 3 to 5 year plan.
Yeah.
And that's to have specific community-based spaces on the Mornington Peninsula based on different community needs, and having a space for 5 years, I've been able to really listen to what the peninsula needs and requires. In terms of short term, I'm just playing out the time where the kids start returning to school, because I've lost a good 80% of seats.
Yep.
During this period, because naturally people are at home with their children and they should be. Yep. So for me at the moment, I've had to really adjust potentially the setup initially, because people may be a bit nervous working around others.
Yep.
So no, I mean, obviously the spacing, But then will my customers change? So will it move from, at the moment, entrepreneurs, small business residing on the peninsula, whereas it's sort of changed, and the inquiries I'm getting are people, corporates, now needing a space 1 or 2 days a week because finally the door's been broken.
Yeah.
And the conversation has started, and wow, they can work from home, but still don't want their people working from at home, but they can work within an office that's well managed, and they're with other people. They're not mentally, the well-being, they're with other people and not at home. So for me, the inquiry level has definitely increased from a corporate point of view. So how can I change the fit out?
Yeah.
So I'm currently working with an architect on that, and to accommodate those people, or is it another space just for the commuter, or the corporate market? So I'm sort of just, I'm going to wait out the next month before I put more hammer and nails in and start moving things around. And that's what works well in a space, is you should always try and move. I mean, we work spaces, big international co-working players, interesting, knocking out the desks over in the US and building glassed offices.
Right.
Because I mean, obviously in Europe and US, it's a lot more important, I think, that people won't return unless they get their own secure space.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely the case. And then you've been probably ahead of the game with that anyway, the way you set it up from the start. But I think also they're still relying upon probably more sanitised through traffic, as opposed to your view, which I totally agree with, is the community aspect of it. And it's one of the reasons you kind of move to those areas, as well as to have that extra space for well-being, mental health, and a whole lot of other things, and physical health. But also you need that connection, which I think you're on the money from what you were doing. It wasn't so much about the price per square metre. It's about that community side. And I know you're looking at doing things, so it's groups of thought leadership and putting on educational events and things like that. That is why you'd be a member of your co-working space.
I think it's my role in the community to help other businesses get out of home.
Yes.
Even if it's for a night, and talk it through and skill up and pivot, or what do they need to do. So being a hub for that would make me really happy.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Brilliant. And it's been awesome, Steph. It's been very, very entertaining and very insightful. What's the website address for your co-working space?
cocoplace.com.au. So
cocoplace.com.au, and you're down in beautiful Mornington, the Mornington Peninsula. You might even encourage people to move house, what way you've been talking today, I think.
I do feel like a relocation specialist for a lot of people, but I enjoy that. I love it down here.
I love it too, and I think it's a fabulous area, and it's not too far away from Melbourne, and I think those kind of regional hubs, certainly I know that governments are keen on those, and I can only see them growing as we go through. So fantastic. Thanks so much for your time today. It's been awesome. Great to catch up.
Thanks, Rob.
It's been great.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.